I'm Lady Jane, at least that's what Ian calls me after he realized that I'm related to ancient Scottish royalty. I think it's kind of cute, so I've graciously accepted it. I'm 75 now, in 2025, and live in Dallas, Texas. In 2024, Ian asked me to become the official illustrator for the Africa's Snow White series of novels and videos, and I agreed. We've sure had a lot of fun in the last year, and I occasionally write poetry too, when I feel moved to do so, as you'll soon see. But let's turn the clock back 44 years, as it's fun to reminisce, and the technology that Ian and I play with each day, lets old photos come back to life and tell their, and others, stories. I was born in Arkansas, one of 2 girls. My older sister lives with me in Dallas. I have lived in Texas for over 45 years. I adapted easily, as I married a true Texan, and I quickly became a Texas cowgirl. As I've illustrated the Africa's Snow White story, I understood that Jennifer, also one of 2 sisters, was given to a mom who required them worship her as perfect, an ideal they were told they could not ever achieve, but worse yet, to sacrifice their lives, children and marriages for her, thus the title of the novels. She was clearly jealous of her daughters, their youth and beauty, demanding their subservience and worship of her as the undisputed queen, the fairest of them all, which much to her chagrin, she was not. A lesser-known connected fairy tale is Snow White and Rose Red, and that's how Ian has imagined the 2 sisters. Since in real life Jennifer most often dressed in white, her sister in red, and of course their mother was a Snow White mother. Ian told me how, try as she did, Jen's sister didn't escape from her mother's complete control of her life, that all of her attempts were thwarted by the mother, and that the results were tragic. Having been isolated from her husband and any would-be suitors, for all of her short, sad life, she was forced to abort or give up any and all of her children to live with mother as her subservient captive. She died of breast cancer at age 61, her and Jennifer's only inheritance from their mother, who took diethylstilbestrol during both of her pregnancies in the 1950s, which is known to increase the risk of breast cancer in female babies 400%, after 50. Thus dooming them both to get breast cancer after menopause, which happened. Jennifer had to battle bilateral breast cancer, twice in her 60s in Panama, and survived. Their mother didn't even go to Jen's sister's deathbed or even care that she was dying, or that she'd caused her untimely death. She simply had no use for a dead avatar. Everyone in her world were just objects to be controlled and manipulated, and a dead object had no value to her. She'd made it very clear that Jennifer was her chosen spiritual successor, that she must be present at her deathbed to inherit her perfect spirit as she was dying. True story. Go figure. How unnatural and tremendously sad that is. Jennifer and her sister are not the only daughters ever to have had a Snow White mother. It's relatively common to have a controlling mother, though the degrees of severity vary greatly. In Jennifer and her sister's case, it was as severe as in the original Snow White fairy tale. Jennifer's life tracks that story very closely, including the queen's huntsman abandoning her in the cold, dark, dangerous forest, in her case, her dad, dutifully serving his queen. Sadly, that actually happened. Daddy dutifully doing that to Jennifer, his firstborn, daddy's girl, at the command of his cruel wife. Jennifer was devastated. Who wouldn't be? As the illustrator of Jennifer's story, I have an intimate understanding of it. So before long I understood that I was immersed in and illustrating a real-life Snow White fairy tale, and I was doing so before the death of the evil queen, so that I got to experience just some her wicked spells unfolding, in real time. So in 2024 I got to witness, firsthand, the immense pain of the evil queen's final vicious curse, that Jennifer would lose all of her children and grandchildren in one fell swoop, and be left all alone, like what had happened to her, except that's what she deserved, but not what Jennifer deserved. That happened just after her sister's death, right on her dad's birthday, who died during COVID, a time that the wicked queen would be reminded that she was now all alone in the world, and Jennifer was not. For any of us believers, clearly that was an undeserved curse, though it did happen, all within 3 weeks. Panicked, her entire family fled back to Canada. Jennifer was so distraught, that she pleaded with God, who'd saved her life from not just one but 2 breast cancers recently, to please take her home, that she no longer had the will to live. Ian confided in me at the time this was all unfolding, that he pleaded desperately with God not to take Jennifer home, but to deliver her and all of them from that evil final curse instead. Then after that wicked queen's death, almost exactly 7 months later, her cruel curse slowly started to unravel. Young families have a bleak future in Canada. Jen's at least getting 1 son, his wife and 2 grandchildren back in 2027, ironically, around what will be the 3-year anniversary of the witch's death at 93 in Kelowna, British Columbia, Canada, in late 2024. Clearly all of this is the obvious reason that Jennifer has run away with Ian and her 2 sons, so often, to live deep within forests and jungles, like Snow White, for all of her adult life. But even there, as in the Snow White fairy tale, and as we've seen in this story, the witch found her and planned to recapture her, if she didn't first escape, yet again. Her sister's life serves as an ominous example of what Jennifer's fate was meant to be, had she not escaped her captivity in cold and snowy Canada, running away to marry Ian in sunny, warm Cape Town in Africa, at age 22. Then doing so repeatedly throughout her life whenever the witch had found her hiding places. Eventually, as you'll soon see, Jennifer ran so far away from her, that she was effectively stymied in her attempts to recapture her. As the illustrator of Jennifer's story, and Ian insists we call it that since, as he reminds me often, he's not Jen's prince, only her knight in rusty armor, I have witnessed the evil queen's curses take hold, but now also unravel. Fortunately most moms, are not Snow White mothers. Our mom, second row, middle, was a gifted English teacher in Arkansas, a literary scholar of note and was such a loving good mom. I have to candidly admit, at times I feel a bit overwhelmed by the reality of it all. It's just so very unfair, and so unlike what my sister and I had with our dearest mom whom we both miss so much. We really miss her. She'd have sacrificed her life for her family. Okay, back to my bio. This is me at age 31. Although I've had a number of loves in my life, including 6 proposals, it was at 31 that I finally discovered true love and married the love of my life, Gary. We live in the cowboy capital of the world, Texas. Rather ironically, whilst my life as a cowgirl was unfolding here, in parallel, the life of another cowgirl was unfolding, in the secondary cowgirl capital of the world, Alberta, Canada. Jennifer and Ian had run away to Calgary, Alberta, Canada in 1983, 3 years after they were married in Africa, and once there she quickly embraced her new life as a cowgirl. I can relate. Every July for one wild week, Calgary hosts the greatest outdoor show on earth, the Calgary Stampede, a rodeo of immense proportions, draws cowboys from all over America, but primarily from Texas, as well as from Montana and Alberta, to compete for $1 million prize. So Jen and I quickly both adapted to our new roles and lives in Texas and Alberta, but had not yet met. In 2024 I was asked by Ian to be the official illustrator of her life story, which I'm now inextricably part of. And so the adventure began. I quickly became part of the story, and judging from what I've experienced along with them in just 1 short year, it's been every bit as wild a ride as the best rodeos in Calgary and Texas. But you know what? Jennifer and I refuse to be bucked off our horses in this crazy, wild rodeo of life. We're both in it to win. I became friends with Ian and Jennifer a little over a year ago, in May of 2024, and I very quickly found myself immersed in the story I was illustrating. So I feel as though I have known them all my life. Ian and I share the interests of storytelling, reanimating, illustrating and making real-life romance videos. He's only a few years younger than me, so this is our shared retirement hobby, and it's really a lot of fun. Ian's truly in awe of this 75-year-old cowgirl from Texas being able to do all of this. Well, some women like to knit, sew or crochet as a hobby, but I choose to use my iPad to illustrate true love, real-life romances. I really enjoy it. The fact that we're both hopeless romantics really helps. Our respective love stories are different, but my husband Gary and his wife Jennifer graciously leave us to our hobbies. As I got immersed in Jennifer's life story, I immediately recognized and felt Ian's abiding love for Jennifer and hers for him. It's impossible not to. So when Ian asked me, I'd agree to illustrate their 54-year-long love story, the novels about Jennifer's life having already been written by their youngest son, Jonathan, long since a best-selling author of sci-fi novels, writing them as Jasper Scott. It's such a lovely twist to Jennifer's life story, that this little baby would one day record it for posterity. Their love story is so compelling and heartfelt, that I found it mesmerizing, and Ian's expertise in narrating Jennifer's life story ensured that I too emotionally experienced their romantic adventures as I illustrated them. Ian calls Jennifer his magnificent obsession, and that clearly comes through in all of his videos. Ian is very honest and upfront about his reasons for doing any of this, and wanting me to help him. When Jennifer became his runaway bride, leaving her mother at age 22 in Canada to return to her fiancé, Ian, in Africa, to marry him, Jennifer's mother pronounced a cruel malicious curse over her. She told Jenny that she'd forget she ever had her, that she'd never inherit, or get any financial support, zero, for her wedding, and she'd prevent her dad and all of her relatives from attending her wedding, which she did. The only thing Jen and her sister inherited from their mother, was breast cancer. Neither benefited from her will. Neither was given a wedding dress or a wedding, and both were denied any family participation or financial support, and their dad dutifully went along with his wife's cruel plans, but that story has a surprise ending decades later. So keep watching. Worse yet, she proclaimed that as long as Jenny was with Ian, her true love, and not obediently back in Canada with her, she'd ensure that Jennifer would lose her entire past, live a life in total obscurity, and die without anyone knowing that she'd ever even existed. Ian told me that ever since Jenny arrived back in Africa to marry him, and he met her at Cape Town's airport, with just a suitcase and a handbag, no wedding dress or money, just her, a few outfits, bras, underwear and nighties, a bit of makeup and a comb, he'd resolved to counteract that vicious, evil curse, as best as he could. All of these novels, paintings, videos, love stories, and everything else he's done and we'd now do together, are simply part of the ongoing lifelong plan to counteract that evil curse. And it's worked. As I delved ever deeper into this real-life love story, ongoing now for 54 years, I became fascinated by its many adventures. This poem I've pinned is titled, The Great Escape, and it's about Jennifer and Ian selling everything in Canada, after 28 years of living there, then at 49 and 50 driving south till the road ends to restart their lives there, far, far away from their love's sworn enemy. But before they leave Canada, they need to get married again to get legal paperwork to immigrate as a married couple. Their third wedding takes place in Helena, Montana in 2006, a necessity preceding their flight to freedom. So it's titled, The Great Escape, because, as you'll soon see, that's exactly what happened. So without further ado, let's begin. Upon the vast expanse of Lake Okanagan's pleasant shores, lived two hearts entwined with a love that refused to be ignored. But a nearby malevolent force sought to rend them asunder. Her jealous evil mother, with the mindset of Snow White's hunter. For 6 long years, in Canada's land of fire and ice they stayed. Then fate, it seemed, had other plans for them in store. As once discovered, their secret hideaway was no more. Thus soon in Helena, Montana, their third vows were exchanged. The required proof of marriage, that commitment arranged. Soon an epic voyage fraught with fear, yet filled with hope, was underway. Love motels hid them safely at night after they traveled south each day. For 21 days they roamed ever further south, through storms and sun. Till they found their safe haven, a love nest where their new life had begun. An oasis in Panama, so safe, so warm, lush and green. With waterfalls sparkling, and bird songs of love serene. No longer hunted, no longer in danger, no longer in flight. These two lovers thanked God beneath the tropical moonlight. Safe at last, in Panama their love story continued to unfold. Their tale of trials faced, of love challenged, needed to be told. It's a solemn testament to a sweet young love that refused to die. A tale with distant echoes from France, emblazoned across the sky. And that's the end of my poem. Naturally, as with all fairy tales, they've all lived happily ever after, in their new land of far, far away, Panama. Their great escape started some 20 years ago, at age 49, but only after 28 years on the run, living all over Canada and the USA, and before that, 22 years in Africa. All of their pain they were forced to endure from her mother's determined attempts to split them up, starting way back in Africa at 19 and 20, didn't split them up. Instead it drove them ever closer together. They remain a loving couple, soon turning 70, still determined that their love will endure, as it has for 54 years now, and counting. As always in life and fairy tales, evil drives the story. Without villains forcing their victims to survive, there's not much of a story to retell. We've only recently discovered that Jennifer has a lot of DNA relatives in Arkansas and the USA's South, and is herself largely Scottish, like me. More intriguing yet, she is related to dozens of people in the South, including Arkansas, with my last name, and even two in Texas with my husband's last name. So Jen's likely a distant cousin to at least one of us. That's kind of a neat twist of fate? It sure is a small world.
You may have noticed that I'm given to flights of fantasy. Sometimes I imagine God and the angels watching all of the love stories on earth playing out in real time, maybe even deciding to tweak them, just a little. In our nightly prayers, Jen and I often ask God to please continue to write our love story, to never lose interest in us. We both promise Him that we will dutifully act out all of the scripts He gives us, which always seemingly happens, just in time, never years ahead of time. That's probably just as well, as otherwise we may discover how we say our final farewell. I built the scoring and management systems for the 15th Winter Olympics, the one with the Jamaican bobsled team, but it was ice dancing that enthralled me. I got 2 tickets for the gold medal round, but I was on duty in the compute center, so Jen went with a friend of mine's wife. I watched, in awe, on TV. It was then that I figured out that, ideally, life is a woman's story, by watching this Russian dancing couple who won the gold medal, very much in love. They skated to Mendelssohn's famous, Wedding March, won gold, and 3 years later the couple were married, in April 1991. Sadly, in November of 1995, rehearsing for a Stars on Ice tour, Sergei, preparing to lift Katya, taking her hand to perform an element, suddenly fainted, crashing to the ice. He died there, in her arms at only 28. Ekaterina Gordieva became a widow and a single mother at 24, but refused to find a new partner, continuing to perform as a single skater in American shows. A year after Sergei's death, Ekaterina wrote a book, My Sergei, a love story, in which she detailed moments of their life on and off the ice. Since the 1988 Olympics I've imagined Jen and I are an ice skating duo, and of course, in all of our performances, I'm the supporting dance partner, and very definitely Jen's the main act. She always has been, and always will be. I'm perfectly okay with that. I'm just so grateful that her partner on the ice in this life is not some other man, that it's still me, and that we're both still alive, in love and together. I wince as I script these videos, thinking how close we've come to saying our final farewell, twice. Jen's had bilateral breast cancer, in her right breast at 61, which is the age at which her sister died from breast cancer, then recently again at 65, in her left breast. We tearfully, urgently pleaded with God, both times, to please grant us overtime, for our love story to continue, and our wish was granted, both times. I searched the world for the very best treatment to save Jen's life, found it, an experimental Mayo Clinic and National Cancer Institute drug, endoxifen, but couldn't get it for Jen, didn't give up, then found it in India, and bought a 5-year supply for Jen. Back in Canada, they'd put me in jail for saving my wife's life, telling her to rather do radiation and chemo, which didn't save her sister's life. In Panama we actually enjoy freedom. As a result, Jen got to live and is doing great. I was awestruck reading the story behind the construction of the Taj Mahal in India, how it's a monument and mausoleum to a beloved wife, but I don't have that much money. Besides, it came 15 years after her death, so she never even got to see it. Jen and I know we are in double overtime now. This romance movie trilogy is my genuinely loving gift to Jen, while we're still both alive, immortalizing her before we say that much feared final farewell, which rather ironically now may be me. Not her. Going home early. Time will tell, but by the grace of God, for now our love story continues, her now 68, and me 69. Anyway, now you know exactly why I make these movies of Jen's story, because it's very much been her life and love story. I've just been her adoring supportive partner in her life and love story. And what an immense privilege that's been.
Ian's promise to us both there as we all said that sad seventh farewell was that if we escaped our captivity in Canada, of our own free will returning to him in Cape Town, he'd ensure that we'd all be married there within 14 days. After having endured 7 forced farewells, this, our 7th reunion, was the happiest one imaginable. After a while, I grew self-conscious, knowing that my face and hair were a mess. I smiled sheepishly, heading for the ladies' washroom, while Ian went to retrieve my bags, now standing all alone on the tiled floor some 20 yards away.
As I went to retrieve Jen's solitary suitcase, still standing on the airport floor where she'd dropped it to eagerly run back into my welcoming arms, the immensity of what Jenny had done, struck me. The clothes she was wearing, her handbag mostly filled with mascara, comb, lipsticks, and blush, her purse with perhaps $50 in it, and her passport, plus all of her worldly possessions now contained in just this one suitcase, and me, were now all she had left in the world. Jenny had been about as close to a perfect daughter as one can ever hope for. She was always at the top of her class, a ballet star, a drum majorette, didn't drink, smoke or do drugs, was not promiscuous, was gentle, well-spoken, kind and courteous. When I see Jenny feeling sad, wondering why her mother thought so badly of her, I quickly reassure her that if I knew we'd have had daughters like her, I'd have asked her to have several. We'd known and loved each other for 7 years, and after I asked for her dad's permission to marry her, we'd been engaged for 2 years, and she was not pregnant. For all this, Jenny deserved some recognition and kindness from her mother and dad, even if that was just $100 to help her buy her dress. Instead she was cruelly rejected, chased away with absolutely nothing to show for her 22 years of having been their perfect daughter. Why? For daring to want to live her own life and dreams. There and then I'd resolved to spoil Jenny for the rest of her life, to make all of her material dreams come true, as well as her romantic ones. Fortunately, I had a successful career as a computer systems expert at a time when my peers, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs and others, all of us the same age, were riding the wave of the computer revolution. Whilst I was nowhere near as successful as them, I did well enough, and so Jen and Jenny, later Jennifer too, got their dream homes, fancy cars, and lots of dresses, jewelry, makeup, shoes and handbags. Make that lots and lots of dresses, hundreds at any point in time. That's even more true now than in our early years. I order them direct from the factory for Jen, after she chooses them, 50 to 100 at a time, since that's the way factories do business. I've always used all of my wealth to say thank you to Jen and Jenny for coming back to me, with nothing that any daughter of most normal parents would have taken for granted. All I got was her. I'd been given the greatest treasure of my life. I knew that, and I appreciated that, acutely. I still do. But let's not forget her dreams, our shared dreams, our love, which is and always was our real treasure. I discovered a very talented artist, now famous, whose paintings all feature women in beautiful natural settings, but imaginary women. I became his patron and publisher, also the most prolific collector of his art. But I did so to enlist his help. Then he started using Jenny as a very real woman in his paintings, and I commissioned many paintings of Jen. Here's the first of those paintings. Jen's story follows that of the Little Mermaid, quite closely, but for her the ending is much happier. Jenny did not end up as white foam on the waves, with no happily ever after. Coincidentally, her name, Jennifer, means white wave and, The Little Mermaid, was her mother's favorite fairy tale. She'd read and later reread it to Jenny many times, even as a teen. Now we know why. I always probed Jen's mind for ideas and dress designs, then secretly went about making those a reality. Often it would take 4 to 6 months for projects to complete, then we'd hang them up on the walls of her dream home, covered with sheets, and unveil them as a surprise gift from us all. I'd enlist our young sons in my projects. Our masterpiece was this huge oil painting of Jen, age 2, and Jenny, age 35, jam-packed with symbolism, the story of their lives, from 2 till 35. The dark and dangerous forest is where they were lost for so many years, but they emerged out into the light, discovering beauty and freedom. That's the short version of the painting story. Jen was given just one day with her dad in the last 25 years of his life. He was to be the courier of her mother's evil message, but that's not the way that day unfolded. This is an actual photo of them, reconciled, hugging, with tears in their eyes. On that day I got him to stand holding Jenny, under her painting, to tell her that he was sorry for all the nasty things his wife got him to do to Jenny, to ask for her forgiveness, which Jenny tearfully freely gave, and then to tell her that he loved her. That was the last day Jen ever saw her dad. Just one special day, but oh my, what a happy ending. Bittersweet, to be sure, but in hindsight more sweet than bitter. I did similar things with jewelry, finding out what she dreamed about, then having those made for her by goldsmiths. Fortunately, my mom was a jeweler, and she had exquisite taste, so she often helped me. Jen's never had pierced ears, so you'll notice that all of the earrings were screw-on, which always complicated matters a bit. Mom found this cornflower blue sapphire ensemble, dating back to Victorian India, in an old British lady's estate, and told me to buy them for Jenny. I've often wondered what stories they could tell. One would think that the ring I'd first taken Jenny to personally select, after proposing to her without a ring, would feature in her 3 weddings. But try as I may, for all 3 of our weddings, Jen's old French family heirloom ring was always substituted for any rings we'd planned on using, always by rather unusual circumstances, almost as if we were meant to ever use only it. I have a lot of fun planning these surprises for Jennifer, generally at least one each year, and I really take them seriously, enjoying them all immensely. One of my dilemmas was that when Jenny became a runaway bride, escaping captivity in Canada and returning to marry me in Cape Town, her mother disowned her and did her best to cancel Jenny's entire childhood, of course blaming Jen and Jen's love for me, as if she was being sweet and innocent. That meant all of Jenny's childhood photos from birth to about age 19, were suddenly gone. I had some photos of Jen since about age 15 onwards, and several of Jenny after we'd met again at 19 and 20, then later many of Jennifer, our sons and me, but Jen's entire childhood had been erased. That also meant that Jenny had no contact information of relatives, who in those days, mothers tended to correspond with and keep contact with. So Jen lost contact with all of her family, not just her dad, sister, and mother. She's the one in this photo wearing yellow on the right. It would take me years, decades actually, to track down her favorite girl cousin, who changed her surname twice by the time I finally found her in England. Brenda is 1 year older than Jennifer, who adored her. Jen's wearing pink on the right, Brenda's next to her wearing yellow and green. The others are Brenda's brothers and Jen's sister. Eventually I found her and reconnected the two cousins, who now regard each other as sisters and correspond frequently. Jen's the one in a yellow dress. In the process I also found Brenda's missing niece, Pippa, who'd been adopted out at birth and subsequently disappeared from their family, reuniting her with her dad, Brenda's younger brother, after more than 4 decades of them all searching for each other, in vain. I found her not in Africa, but living close to Brenda in England, in her mid-40s, with a grown daughter and son. Can you even begin to imagine how many tears of joy were shed by all of us? Within days Brenda and her husband Clive, a military chaplain in the UK, met with Pippa, and all of them are so happy to have found each other and visit regularly since then. They're now a close family, living in the UK. Within weeks Brenda had reconnected Pippa with her dad, and then he'd reconnected her with her mom, both of them still living in Africa. This last Christmas, Pippa and her 2 children traveled to Africa and were reunited with them all, after nearly 45 years of not knowing where they were. I'd done much of this by entering Jennifer's DNA in all the DNA and family tree organizations, after which I started locating her lost relatives, many, first with DNA matches, and then with the extensive family tree I'd built for Jennifer, only a small part of it shown here, going back to the 1600s in France. Ironically, by doing that I immediately noticed an intersection with my family, who'd fled from France to Africa in the early 1700s, whilst Jenny's family had fled to England, at the same time, from the same place, since they were being persecuted by the Sun King and his Catholic Church, at the same time, so they'd had to flee to save their lives, at exactly the same time. Jen's and my 10th generation ancestors were part of a small Protestant church in Poitiers, back then regarded as a sect, in southwest France, and they definitely knew each other, quite possibly intimately. That is when and where Jen's old family heirloom ring comes from. The ring that as the eldest granddaughter Jen had inherited from her granny. The one we got married with, 3 times, that had gone to England on Jen's 10th generation ancestor's ring finger, whilst my 10th generation ancestor, who'd very likely given her this ring, went to Africa with his family. But her mother forced her to stay in England, and so they were never reunited. But my biggest breakthrough came as a result of Jen's dad's surprise visit way back in the 1990s, as a result of Jenny's one and only and final day with her dad. Suitably guilty over all the cruel things he'd let his wife command him to do to Jenny, having said he's sorry, asking for Jenny's forgiveness, having been forgiven by Jenny, telling her, at my urging, that he loved her. I pressured him to find all of Jen's childhood photos which the mother hid away at the top of their hall closet, at the back, behind all sorts of things, most of them color slides, and then send them to us. He did that. So, along with collecting old photos relatives that I'd contacted had of young Jen, pretty soon I was able to reconstruct Jen's entire childhood. I even found one photo of baby Jen on her dad's lap, the only such photo ever taken. The only photo of Jen on her dad's lap. In fact, I reconstructed her childhood so comprehensively that I'm not aware of anybody I've met, including myself, whose childhood is now better documented with photos. I compiled a huge, thick folder of Jen's childhood photos, as you can surmise from this image. Then presented them to Jen saying, "Here you go Jenny, here's all of your childhood photos back." When Jen's mother realized I had all of Jen's childhood photos, and she was left with none, she angrily contacted me demanding them all back. Too late. I firmly declined, saying, "No. You've said that she's no longer your daughter, that you'd forget you ever had her, so now I insist, you do exactly that. Enjoy living with the consequences of your extreme cruelty." So for the last 30 years, or so, of that cruel old witch's life, she had no photos of her firstborn, her daughter, Jenny, 0. Jenny now had them all. She had her childhood back, with all of her fondest memories fully intact. Of course, had the old witch ever displayed any remorse and asked Jen to forgive her, like her dad had done, I'd have found a way to at least get her copies of Jen's childhood photos, but she never did, so I didn't. Some may think that cruel of me. But they've clearly not had dealings with a malignant narcissist. It seems I was chosen by Jen's real daddy, at age 15, to look after her, as he already knew she would need all the help and protection she could get, and that I could give. What an adventure life has been since first meeting Jen, at midday on the summer solstice, way back in 1971. My life's never had a dull moment since. I'm Ian, turning 70 in a little more than a year, with some observations that the progress of time and the benefit of hindsight make obvious and relevant. Jenny's birth mother, who we at least now know was a chronic narcissist, was fixated on controlling the lives of her daughters. Jenny, wearing white, as her mother called her, was her golden girl, her sister, in red, was the scapegoat. Snow White and Rose Red, sisters and daughters of the witch, got no help from their dad, the evil queen's huntsman. Neither sister was to ever have a life of their own. At least that was their mother's obvious intent. Jenny was being groomed as her mother's spiritual successor, which she emphatically stated was to happen just before her death, for which Jennifer was to be present. That's when her old body was no longer going to be available for that powerful, but detestable malicious spirit, to use as its physical vessel to continue with its destructive malicious behaviors. You may find this all confusing. So did we way back then, but we don't anymore. Now we understand that this principle is entirely biblical. But in order for her mother to do that, Jenny had to submit to her total control of Jenny's life, and of course, she could not run away from mother, which by now you may realize, she'd instinctively done, multiple times, this being a pivotal escape. In the mother's mind, much of the reason for that not happening, was Jenny's desire to escape her smothering control, so that she could actually have a love story and a life of her own. So I had to be removed from Jennifer's life, since without me, she'd be able to keep almost total control of Jennifer. For 7 years, since first meeting, that old dragon had successfully thwarted Jenny and my desire to escape her captivity, and she'd recaptured the princess 7 times, leaving us feeling defeated and frustrated, to say the least. But after that truly sad 7th farewell at Niagara Falls, 7 months later Jenny did escape, this time putting a huge distance between her and the dragon, leaving her seething with rage, desperate for revenge. But Jenny kept being drawn back to mother by the strings attached to mother that she so expertly used to control Jenny's life. Jenny was hoping to see a change in her mother's attitudes towards her. That was a big mistake. That placed us in mortal danger, and I do not use that term lightly. Bouts of severe depression, suicidal thoughts, overt, not just covert, death threats and huge amounts of confusion resulted from that continued contact with her mother, who made it clear that I was to exit Jennifer's life, dead or alive, though she preferred me dead, so that I couldn't ever make a comeback. In Jen's case, in the depths of her depressions, often she'd plead with her mother for her life, often pointing out the obvious, that she was a mommy to 2 little boys, and also a wife. Her mother's reaction was not to flinch, as any normal mother would, but to increase what she now viewed as successful pressure, confirmed by the feedback she was getting, making it clear that there was to be no compromise, ever. She preferred Jenny dead rather than rebellious and non-compliant, which of course would mean that Jenny was not agreeing to be her spiritual heir apparent, so she'd be of no further use to mother. Finally we understood the need to run away and go no contact, and Jenny's road to healing started. We can confirm that in dealings with a chronic narcissist, that is the best and only antidote to their evil. Simply remove them from your life as meticulously as possible, ensuring that all doors are closed, and that they do not have any roundabout or backdoor ways of still getting at you. And so it was that free-spirited Jenny had become Jennifer. She took me out on the deck of Chalet Rose, her ultimate Canadian dream home, and literally proposed to me, knowing that this time, to run away to the land of far, far away, we'd need valid formal marriage documents, which we did not have, showing her maiden names and my names, as if we'd never been married before. That was a proposal I'd never expected, and could not turn down. Tough as it was for us to give up everything we'd accomplished in Canada, at 50, to restart our lives in faraway Panama, a Spanish-speaking country which placed restriction on us, one being that whilst they'd let us live there, we could not work there. To her credit, Jennifer insisted we do so, even though it meant she'd lose her dream home and her comfortable life in Canada, after 28 years of living there, and that she may never get a lovely replacement home in Panama. Jennifer was about to become bride number 3, and wife number 3, and our great escape, by far the most dramatic, though the word traumatic is accurate too, was about to begin. While Jen, 54 years after we'd first met in faraway Africa, despite all the anger, jealousy and hatred pitted against us, we've survived and our love story's still going strong. Here we are, Jen, the last ones left standing, both of us now 68, all of our tormentors gone. What a relief that is. Thank you for putting our love for each other above all else, even your dream homes. It's paid off, Jen. We're growing old together, not alone, still in love with only each other. That may sound silly, but more often than not nowadays, couples split up long before 70. We've run away together so many times, I've almost lost count. Here's a memory of us eloping to Kauai. Remember? Just one of many, but through them all, our love survived, even thrived. I'm deeply honored and grateful to still have your love, even more so that you're still alive. With both of you sisters guaranteed to get breast cancer, your sister dying of her supposedly minor early detected and treated breast cancer, in Canada, at only 61, your breast cancer ordeals were beyond frightening.
We'd been living right across the lake from Mother, right under her nose, the last place she'd thought to look for us, but relatives of ours, thinking they'd be helping us to mend fences with my mother, had given us away, not understanding how dangerous that was. It was finally time to disappear forever, to run away so far, that nobody could find us. I was 48, my son's grown, Ian and I still together and in love, but our cover was blown. My dream home no longer felt like a safe house. We'd be looking over our shoulders, wondering when Mother's next plots and schemes would be unleashed upon us. We had a fleet of Mercedes limos, and I had a sexy red sports car for shopping trips. We'd be walking away from a lot. My dream home in the forest, overlooking the 90-mile-long Lake Okanagan, had been our safe home for almost 7 years.
There was a problem with our plans to run far, far away. None of those countries would accept old copies of our African marriage documents, and the South African Embassy in Canada was just not helpful at all. Since we'd be immigrating as a married couple, that was a problem. So I went to the local government office in the nearby city of Vernon, to inquire if I could marry my wife, to get valid paperwork. Their answer shocked me. No sir, you cannot, and besides, you and her have the same last name, she could be your sister. I showed them Jen's old birth certificate dating back to 1957, but they simply shrugged and said, it's not a legal Canadian document, and anyway, we don't remarry already married people. Then when I pressed her, she seemed a bit irritated, answering, Sir, Parliament has just passed a new law allowing men to marry men, and women to marry women, and we're all busily working, rather stressed, to hastily comply with that new law. Please don't waste our time, you're already married. I was speechless. All I wanted to do is to marry my wife of by then, 27 years. As I drove back from the city of Vernon, to Chalet Rose, I kept thinking, what on earth do we do now? We're stuck here. Prisoners of Jennifer's cruel mother. Then suddenly, with crystal clarity, I could almost hear angels singing. In my mind was the solution. It was early spring, the Rockies were beautiful, it was time for a road trip. I'd drive with Jennifer and our grown sons to the great state of Montana, where we'd owned many properties, pretend we'd never been married, show them all of our birth certificates and get married there. Maybe that would work. I mean, in Vegas even Elvis will marry you. How tough could it be? Back in Chalet Rose, I reported my failure to a surprised Jennifer, then my solution. She just smiled coyly at me, saying,
Well Ian, you've married Jen. Jenny ran away to Cape Town and you two got married there. It's about time you make an honest woman out of me. Will you marry me and run away with me? To our new land of far, far away? Will you accept my proposal? Let's find a love nest and live out the rest of our lives there, no longer subject to harassment. I promise I will stay with you there and never return to Canada until she's dead, and that I will have no contact with her, ever, ever again. It's over Ian, let's run.
Jennifer, I love you. That's a proposal I'd never refuse. I accept your proposal. Start getting ready for us all to drive on down to Montana in a few days' time.
Time to run away again, to drive south till the road ends, to the land of far, far away, Panama. Yes, naturally I cried when we sold Chalet Rose. It was to have been my ultimate dream home in Canada, and for almost 7 years, it was. We'd chosen to hide in the last place Mother would have thought to look for us. Right under her nose, on the other side of the lake. And now she knew that. We'd first eloped to Princeville, Kauai, Hawaii, but then found out we could only live there for 6 months each year, no longer. Not that that law applied to people flooding the USA's southern border, but sadly, it did for us. At least for a while it was a beautiful dream. So we left Kauai to hide away in the forests on the escarpment above Niagara Falls, Ontario, several time zones away from Mother, then living in Kelowna, British Columbia, Canada. But knowing all of my dreams, Ian secretly built Chalet Rose for me, while we were living on the Niagara escarpment at the other end of Canada, flying back and forth to supervise its construction, telling me he had business in Calgary to attend to. Then, months later, in October of 1999, having sold our forest home in Ontario, Ian drove us down into the USA, then across several states to Montana, and finally up to British Columbia. He blindfolded me, before we got to Chalet Rose. Then carried me across the threshold of Chalet Rose, gently placing me down and removing my blindfold. I was overwhelmed. My dreams had come true, yet again. Whenever I say, "Thank you, Ian," he smiles, then gently corrects me, saying, "Thank your daddy, Jen. He loves you so very, very much. He always has, and he always will." Then as an afterthought, he adds, "He just chose me, at 16, as his young knight, appointing me to protect and spoil you. But he's the king. You're his daughter, so I guess that makes you a princess?" Then he smiles again and says, "I'm glad you love it, Jen. By the way, I love you too. I always have, and I always will." This was a Valentine's Day surprise for me, which there falls in the snowy season. I sure liked my dream home, Chalet Rose. What's not to like? Every day in the kitchen I cooked and baked overlooking the lake. The lake had so many faces, especially during sunrises, sunsets, storms, winter, spring, summer and fall. My desk, on the top floor, faced the lake, and I'd often look up from my work, getting lost in my dreams for a while, several times each day. But let's not forget the ugly side of living in nature there. Forest fire season. We lived through the worst firestorm in the Okanagan Valley's history, in an Austrian wooden home, in amongst the tinder-dry forest. At least that year our side of the lake was spared. Years later, already living safely in Panama, hundreds of homes surrounding Chalet Rose were burned to the ground in yet another firestorm. We'd lived through the Okanagan Mountain Park forest fire. Fortunately, that year we'd escaped unscathed. The fires raged unabated for several weeks, till eventually the rains came. The most significant wildfire in BC history caused $200 million in damage, evacuated 33,000 people and destroyed over 230 homes, severely damaging some 500 others. And now, an even more frightening season had once again dawned. Mother's Found Your Hideaway season had arrived. Life in Chalet Rose was never going to be the same again. Our lives were about to get stressful. We knew that. Mother always swirled in all the drama which, of course, she constantly created.
I'll phone ahead to the courthouse in Helena, their state capital, to work out all the details. I was amused and relieved. I mean, Jennifer, at 49, still wanted me to be her husband. After all we've been through. Perhaps because of all we've been through. And so our second last road trip, of so many through the years, to Montana, from British Columbia, through the Canadian and American Rocky Mountains, was soon underway. The state of Montana just needed to see Jennifer's birth certificate, and mine, to establish our legal names and birth dates. The clerk in the courthouse there was a pretty young Western girl, who was living with her boyfriend. Her mother had warned her that would end badly, urging her to get married. So she was amused to meet us and our grown sons, to find out that we were finally getting married, saying, "When I next see Mom, I'm going to tell her about you too, how you're still together, at almost 50, and finally getting married." All was proceeding smoothly. But we'd get the license to be married only after Jen, not 50 yet, got a blood test for rubella. That's the law there for new brides of childbearing age. Jennifer was 49. We then met with Judge Marvin Pitch, in his office adjacent to the courtroom, who explained that was the law, and to please be back before 3 p.m., as after marrying us, he was going fishing. As you can see, Jennifer and I were finally being legally married by Judge Marvin in his courthouse, as if for the very first time ever, and using her maiden names. We thanked the amused judge who allowed a photo to be taken of Jennifer and I getting married, our sons having been our witnesses. That's the closest we'd ever got to being U.S. citizens. Needless to say, we felt so special. Unlike the government bureaucrats in Canada, all the good folks of Montana are just so friendly and helpful, rather scornful of any and all red tape, and definitely of Washington, D.C.
At 49, in the great state of Montana, at the end of May in 2006, a Wednesday, that afternoon Ian finally made an honest woman out of me, with our grown sons cheering. I'd been watching, as Jen had done after 7 years as Jenny took over from her becoming bride number 2. Jenny's 27-year-long tenure as wife number 2, was drawing to a close, and soon my reign as wife number 3 was about to begin. I was now officially bride number 3, Jennifer May, and our newest, and last adventure, the most ambitious yet, was about to begin. Some of you may think this 3 wives theme a bit strange, but most men, at least those that stay the course, understand that they will have at least 3 distinct wives, not just one.
Loving Jen, Jenny, and Jennifer has been a wonderful privilege. 54 years later I don't want it to ever end. Sweet Jen, the love of my youth, dearest Jenny, my runaway bride, mother of our sons, and my darling Jennifer, with whom I'm entering the final chapter of life. From the moment we met at midday on the summer solstice way back in 1971, in the wilderness in southern Africa, I knew you were truly special, a precious gift from God. Your alluring gaze and your obvious beauty captivated me from the instant we met. I didn't yet know your name, but within an hour I went searching for you. I just had to find you again, but I didn't. It seemed you were lost to me, forever. That was a truly hopeless feeling. I didn't know until much later, that you'd gone searching for me at exactly the same time. After we both failed in our attempts to find each other, having given up, suddenly there you were, standing right in front of me, but this time just the two of us. For the first time in my life, I was speechless. Mesmerized, in a state of intense thrall. Realizing this, smiling knowingly, you put the book down walking towards me, not breaking eye contact. Then as you walked past me, still silent, you briefly paused, looking back at me, your gaze and smile inviting me to follow you, and then you were gone. I snapped out of my trance, and honestly, I had to try hard not to run after you. I quickly caught up with you, asking for your name. Within minutes we were walking and talking excitedly, effortlessly, as if we'd always known each other, had lost contact, but now were reunited. So I instinctively reached for your hand. Bemused, you smiled at me, giving my hand a gentle squeeze of approval, acceptance. Our lifelong love story had begun at 15 and 16, and though at times it's felt like it couldn't possibly continue or succeed, it has survived despite repeated onslaughts designed to cruelly end it, forever. For 35 years already, your deep affection, friendship and loving care for me, have filled my heart with a warmth I never knew possible. Your shyness, your vulnerability, your excitement at feeling my intense adoration and love have touched my soul in ways I never thought possible. Throughout our love's journey together, we've been victorious, defeating every challenge. Whether it was overcoming the endless selfish cruel acts of your mother, or navigating the unavoidable highs and lows of life, we've stood together, unwavering in our love and devotion for each other. Thank you, Jennifer, from the bottom of my heart. Today, as we're being married in Helena, for the third time, finally determined to escape forever from our relentless lifelong enemy, embarking on a bold new journey together, at 50, I make these promises to you, my dearest darling Jennifer. I vow to continue loving you unconditionally, more and more with each passing day. I vow to be a role model for our precious boys as we sustain an environment of family unity permeated by the Holy Spirit, filled with laughter, warm affection and genuine love. I promise to stay faithful to you, to find you more beautiful and desirable with each passing year, and to protect and care for you with all that I am and have. I will always respect and cherish you, honoring the beautiful God-given bond that we've shared for almost 4 decades. Jen, Jenny, and Jennifer, you're the loves of my life. Each one of you holds a special place in my heart, but together you are absolutely everything to me. You share the same soul, and I'm bonded with that soul, forever. Over these 35 years, you've all grown and evolved into the woman I'm about to marry, for the third time, no less. The three of you have finally merged and stand before me here today, ready and willing to be my third bride and wife, my Jennifer, the true embodiment of all the loves of my life. What an immense honor and privilege it's been, loving you and feeling your love. It's just so completely addictive, that I don't want it to ever end. I vow to be your rock, your safe haven in stormy seas. I promise to always be there for you, to protect you against the wickedness and cruelty so relentlessly pitted against you, to offer you comfort in times of sickness, sadness and need, to give you strength in times of weakness. I will support and uplift you, standing, sitting and lying by your side, through thick and thin, forever and always. Jennifer, when I look deep into your eyes, I see your true beauty, your eternal soul, and next to your soul I see a reflection of my soul there, and you know what? We're holding hands. Kindred spirits, we've always been. We share an enduring bond that binds and completes us in every way. Your loyalty and love have transformed me, showing me a depth of emotions I'd never have guessed existed, until I met you. With you, I'm whole again, no longer a wandering soul. With you, Jennifer, I'm home. Today, I stand before you, my beloved Jennifer, ready to embark on this, our boldest adventure yet, an exciting new chapter of our lives together, with us running away again, this time to the land of far, far away. I promise to love you tenaciously, to cherish you deeply, and to hold you close in my heart and soul, until the end of time. I love you more than words can express, and I will spend the rest of my life doing my best to show you just how much you've meant and still mean to me, how eternally grateful I am for your devotion and love. Jennifer, my dear sweet love, let us now take this bold step together, hand in hand, our hearts beating in unison, in perfect harmony, bound by a deep love that must never falter. Today, tomorrow, and, by the grace of God, for all eternity, this shared journey of our souls must never end. It simply must transcend even our inevitable final earthly farewell. You know what, Jennifer? When I look deep into your eyes, seeing your soul there, I'm sure it will.
My dearest darling Ian, from the very depths of my soul, I stand before you today, ready to make this declaration of love, devotion, and continued commitment to you. Our journey together began in the wilds of southern Africa, after an unusual meeting in which we didn't even have the chance to speak. But I knew that our hearts had connected in a way that transcended time and space. So within an hour I went searching for you, and, it turns out, you for me, but it seemed you were lost to me, and me to you. Then suddenly I turned around and there you were standing in the doorway of that dear little store. As you looked up and our eyes met again, both of us realizing we'd found each other again, I knew from the dazed look in your eyes that you were going to be mine, so I put the book down, walked out of that door, past you, turning around to look at you over my shoulder, beckoning you to follow me with just my eyes. And here we are at the other end of the world, in Montana, getting married for the third time, 35 years later. Your romantic heart, the affection, tenacious loyalty and care you've shown me, along with your handsome charm and chivalrous nature, captivated my heart from the very beginning. I confirm that you were the one for me during our canoe trips upriver. That's really when our lifetime of running away from everyone and everything began. Each afternoon we escaped together, for a precious few hours. Those, and all subsequent escapes were the dress rehearsals for our greatest escape, ever. The one we're about to embark on, together, to our new land of far, far away. I pray we'll finally find our safe and secure love nest there, in which to live out the last third of our lives, still together and in love. Ian, your strong and steady presence, have filled me with a sense of security and most important of all, for me, a feeling of belonging. But it was at our secret place, our special waterfall, where we first found true love. There I felt the spark of something truly magical taking hold of us. With just my paper-thin blue bikini separating our fast-maturing bodies, we both almost gave in to overwhelming temptation. Being pregnant at 15 would have given mother's cruel plans to separate us forever, credibility, either way, our lives would never be the same again. I often wonder if we'll find a place like that, ever again? Time will tell. Ian, God chose you to save me from the darkness of my past, from the cruel clutches of my obsessive mother, and for that, I am forever grateful, both to God and to you. Whenever we faced challenges and struggles, your unwavering love and support have been my guiding light. You've shown me what it means to love unconditionally, to stand by someone through thick and thin, and to never give up on each other even when most would. And now, as we stand here facing each other, on our third wedding day, no less, 35 years later, I'm filled with a sense of immense elation and gratitude for the love we've shared, and still share. Ian, I promise to love you unconditionally, to stand by your side, to grow old with you, and to face whatever still comes our way. I promise to cherish the way you look at me, hold me, kiss me, and make love to me with a passion that never wanes. I promise to be your partner, your confidant, your lover and your best friend. I promise every day to thank God for you and our two boys, created from our love, and I promise to nurture our family with love and sheer delight, now and forever. As we embark on this bold, rather scary final chapter of our lives, still together, I'm filled with trepidation, but also with a sense of awe and wonder. I take comfort in the depth of the connection of our souls, the fortitude and resilience of our love, and in the knowledge that God has not brought us this far simply to abandon us and watch unmoved as we self-destruct. Our love is like the stars in the night sky, ever present, shining bright and beautiful, guiding us on our journey through life. And, just as the stars endure forever, so too, shall our love endure the test of time. Those are no idle words, Ian. Our love has indeed endured and survived against tremendous odds. Oh Ian, I will love you forever. I love you, Ian, with every fiber of my being. You are my rock, my soulmate, my past, present and future. And now, at almost 50, I can't wait to continue this amazing new adventure with you, by your side, you still by my side. Thank you for loving, then proposing to and marrying Jen in cold and snowy Canada. I was so young and innocent then, so vulnerable. Thank you for making a woman out of me there, but also for encouraging the emerging emboldened Jenny to become your runaway bride. 9 months later, I'd escaped back to Africa, becoming your second bride, Jenny. Love had won. I've learned a lot from Jen and Jenny, and I'd like to think that I've retained and combined the very best of Jen and Jenny within me, and that as your newest bride, Jennifer, I'm finally ready to add long overdue closure to the most vexing problem we've ever faced. Ian, I've given up trying to change Mother's hardened heart. I'll not return to Canada until she's gone from this world, and I'll never contact her, ever again. It's over. So here's to our third wedding, Ian, and to the love God so clearly chose for us, a love that has stood the test of time, and I'm surer than ever before, will last for all eternity. Ian, I'm your Jennifer, and at 49, I'm finally all grown up. I'm forever and always your true love. I stand before you as Jennifer, but at my side are my bridesmaids, Jen and Jenny, and they're glowing with happiness for me, for us, for themselves. Thank you for loving us all so steadfastly. Please let me be your final love, your only love, your forever love. Oh Ian, why have you loved me so much?
Jennifer, out of all the women in this world, I honestly can't imagine loving anyone else. Just you. Only you, always you.
Oh Ian, I will love you forever. It feels like the first two weddings were dress rehearsals for this one. Ian, I belong with you, and you with me, forever.
Jennifer, out of all the women in this world, I can't imagine marrying anyone else. Just you. Only you. 3 times.
By the power vested in me by the great state of Montana, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Ian, I've noticed that Jennifer's middle name is May, so today on the last day of May, I think it's appropriate for me to say, you may now kiss your bride, Jennifer May.
I'm Ian, in 2025 now almost 70, explaining why I do these videos about Jennifer, and some of what I've done since she ran away from mother in Canada, back to Africa, to marry me 46 years ago now, and why. This photo accurately represents how Jenny came back to me in June of 1979, in Cape Town. She had some luggage, a big handbag with makeup, passport and perhaps $50, the clothes on her back, and herself, no dowry or financial assistance from her parents, nothing else. But I'd just been given the greatest treasure of my life. I knew that then, I still know it now. Jenny had unselfishly chosen the survival of our love for each other, ignoring her mother's cruel threats and vindictiveness, by choosing to share her life with me and stoically enduring the pain her mother subsequently inflicted on her for doing that. Still, I felt so bad for Jenny, knowing how much pain she'd endured, and that it may never stop. I resolved right there and then, in that airport arrivals area in Cape Town, to remedy all of that as best as I could. For the past 46 years, every year I've planned something extraordinary for Jenny, and now, Jennifer. Generally that's done in secret, but sometimes not. This romantic video trilogy is her surprise for 2025. One such surprise was importing an embassy limo from Tokyo, restoring it, and with our eldest son dressed as the chauffeur, our youngest son as doorman and photographer, we took Jen out on a dream date on Easter Eve, in 2005. Another was buying her this mansion backing onto the 17th hole of a prestigious golf course in Calgary, Canada, with a circular driveway and 2 acres of lawns. And for her shopping trips into town, this red little sports car, with a vanity license plate in our language, that means sweetheart. The black Mercedes limo, is mine. Jennifer really loved her car. And I loved mine. Of course, Jen really loved her ultimate Canadian dream home. Chalet Rose, overlooking the 90-mile-long deep Lake Okanagan with its very own version of Nessie, called Ogopogo, which one tended to see after drinking a couple of 6-packs, whilst fishing. And when Jen, as an unknown author, wrote her first cookbook, Splendid Desserts, and no publisher was interested in publishing her, I mortgaged our paid-off home, and used that money to become her publisher. Everybody thought I was plumb crazy for exchanging our home for a few pallets of cookbooks of an unknown author with no official credentials, all, no exceptions, looking at me much like Jack, of the Beanstalk fairy tale, but just like what happened with Jack's Magic Beans, within 6 months, it had become a national bestseller. I'd bet everything I'd worked for, till 35, on Jennifer, not even flinching, and won. Jennifer's career was now launched. Jen went on to write 21 cookbooks over the next 30 years, 5 of which became national bestsellers. In the process of doing so, along the way, Jen's low-carb Facebook page quickly acquired well over 1 million followers, and it reigned supreme for 7 years straight as #1 in the low-carb and keto world. Considering that her mother often angrily declared that without her being allowed to control and direct Jennifer's life, she'd be a nothing, easily forgotten, like she'd never even existed. The exact opposite has happened. And I'd hasten to add, were it not for these videos, nobody would even know that her mother ever even existed. That's kind of ironic, don't you think? By walking away from mother's control, Jennifer blossomed. The real Jennifer emerged from the shell mother had her trapped in, hidden from the world. She emerged shining bright as the noonday sun. You may be tempted to think that this was all as a result of me. Well, you'd be wrong. As her appointed knight, I always take my orders from her daddy, the king, on what to do to support and spoil his daughter, the princess, to shower her with love and gifts. But I must stress, I'm not her prince. Those tend to be rather entitled anyway. I'm her knight, her appointed defender, protector, and provider. I love being her knight. I'd be willing to die defending Jennifer, and often, that's very nearly happened. If you haven't figured it out yet, I'm addicted to loving and spoiling Jennifer. I dote on her, I simply adore her, I always have and always will, but I'm also no pushover. She's always been very much the submissive super feminine princess, and I've been her rugged masculine protector, her knight, though unlike in this image of us, I never really dressed that fancy. I spend very little on clothes, preferring that Jennifer rather use most of my clothing allowance for her clothes instead. Jennifer has a huge collection of colorful Hawaiian dresses, hundreds. We both know our respective roles, and we happily abide by them. They're complementary roles, not supplementary ones. She's a real girly girl, an ultra-feminine woman, and I'm her man. It's that simple. It's a formula that's worked perfectly for us, for 54 years already, and God willing, for many more.
There's the young bride, the love of their youth, who's not yet had any children. Let's call that the endless honeymoon phase, in my case 11 years, as our eager young bodies, constantly primed by copious amounts of estrogen, are urging us to fall pregnant. Most husbands really enjoy being with that bride. Then that all changes after we have our first child, and we start figuring out how exactly to be a mommy. But most often our bodies soon urge us to have at least another baby, so often we do. That's such a nice phase, in my case that lasted 22 years, as we settle into a long holding pattern raising children. The urgency to fall pregnant, yet again, soon wanes, and so our urges become, well, a lot less urgent, but thankfully still present. Then suddenly the children are fully grown, ready to leave our comfortable nest, and us moms are more than a little emotional about that. This often happens just before menopause, which greatly complicates everything. Our husbands notice a huge change in us, we don't. We're a little annoyed that suddenly they're being so, well, different. If our marriages survive that most dangerous of all transitions, soon enough we settle into a new phase of our married lives. All of that coincided with our great escape to Panama. Tumultuous times? Exciting times? Yes, but also very romantic times. A whole new beginning for Ian and me, at 50.
That was wedding number 3, and by the end of that momentous day, Jennifer and I were finally also married. Our honeymoon would have to wait 1 month, for our 23-day drive on down to Panama, through Helena, Montana again, to the southern border with Mexico and beyond.
We've been on ambitious road trips before, crossing Canada west to east, and back again, thinking, how tough could this road trip be? We'll be there in 10 days? From BC's interior, the Okanagan Valley, we crossed the Rockies to Calgary, then to Great Falls, Montana. Then we headed south through Helena, where we'd recently got married, through Idaho, Wyoming, Utah, and finally, Arizona, arriving in Tucson 5 days later. Foolishly, we reasoned we were halfway there. We'd strongly recommend against driving to Panama, rather fly. Mexico's huge. 9 days later we got to Guatemala. We traveled 9 to 5 only as nighttime driving's dangerous. The rainy season added a lot of danger to our trip. Border crossings and corruption were a nightmare. Canadians need no visas, but our old dog, Happy, did, from every country. Tough to get, costly, expiring quickly, so we paid yet more bribes. From Guatemala we traveled through Honduras, El Salvador, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, finally entering Panama after 22 days, grateful to all still be alive. Just one more day. It was a one-way trip. Never, ever again. It was time for our third honeymoon, which was to happen on the long road south from Western Canada to Panama. We'd planned on a much shorter trip, and thus, an extended honeymoon, but we ended up spending 21 days in the love motels of Central America, a different one every night. At 49, newly married, for the third time, just 9 years before the dreaded menopause arrived in my life, at 58, this was to be our third and final honeymoon. Had we fully understood that at the time, I'm sure we would have made much more of it. But of course my pending change of life came as a huge unwelcome surprise, as it does for almost all women. But we were so stressed on our 3-week flight to freedom, encountering life and death situations almost every day on the road, that it all went by way too fast, and in a bit of a blur. Every night we spent in love motels was nice, but this third honeymoon was not the lusty passionate last fling it could have been. Maybe it should have been? But it wasn't. We were just so tuckered out and happy to all still be alive at the end of each day, that we clung to each other for comfort, like two little orphaned monkeys, all alone, abandoned and lost in the jungle. So the usual scenes of lust and passion were, well, replaced by a lot of hugging, cuddling, kissing, touching and closeness, with occasional sexy trysts thrown in for good measure. But you know, Ian had just turned 50 only days ago, and I was 49. We'd already had 2 honeymoons, and a lifetime of passion, so there's that to consider. Plus of course, we were not vacationing. We were on an epic quest to finally be free. That, and survival, not our third honeymoon, were foremost on our minds.
Are you coming to join me here, Nicholas? And just so you know, I'm only wearing this sheet.
Oh Ian, why have you loved me so much?
Jennifer, out of all the women in this world, I honestly can't imagine marrying anyone else. Just you. Only you, 3 times.
Ian, I belong with you, and you with me. Oh Ian, I will love you forever. "11,000 kilometers, 23 days later, we'd arrived in our new country. Panama was so different from Canada, tropical, warm, colorful, swimmable oceans, lovely sandy beaches, pristine rivers, Lots of waterfalls and pools, good food, cheap beer and wine, monkeys, so many colorful birds, butterflies and flowers, no snow or ice, except in our drinks, the Panama Canal and, best of all, our lifelong enemy was gone for good.
Us moving to Panama in 2006, you agreeing to give up your last Canadian dream home, was, it turns out, key to your survival. Jennifer's a bilateral breast cancer survivor. A large tumor in her right breast was removed at 61. In this photo, she's 17 again, then suddenly it's 50 years later and she's 67, 2 months after a tumor in her left breast was removed. Jen, Jenny and Jennifer are essentially 3 women, all with the same beautiful soul. They all love me and I love them all. Jennifer is the most feminine girl and woman I've ever met. A real girly girl. She always was, and continues to be, my perfect little Barbie doll. But I don't demand that. She wants to be. Ever since meeting Jen at 16, life's been anything but boring. 54 years later it's still not. I'd often told her that she was beautiful, that I couldn't believe that someone like her would even give me the time of day. Also that she was my magnificent obsession, my mermaid, that her siren song had captured me, bound me to her, forever. Knowing how I felt and still feel, naturally, starting way back then when we met again at Christmas in 1975, she wondered about the depth of my love for her. What the future would hold if she went all in on our love. I still don't fully understand what I did to deserve the love of such a beautiful soul. Jen, I've loved you all since our very first meeting, at 15. Jenny, you took another 7 years to appear, by then 22. And Jennifer? Well, you finally arrived in our lives at 48, and though you tend to dominate, I'm so glad Jen and Jenny are still with us. If not, I'd miss them both, terribly. Jen, Jenny and Jennifer, you share the same beautiful soul. I loved you all then, I love you all now, and I'll never stop loving all of you. Jen, thank you for these last 54 years. Jenny, thank you for these last 47 years, and Jennifer, thank you for these last 20 years, all of us together in Panama. Let's all pray that there will still be many more. Please God. Please. My 3 brides had very different interactions with their mother. That, importantly, helped to define their distinct personas. Jen was their mother's primary victim. A gentle soul, innocent, dependent on mother's approval, she broke Jen's spirit many times. She drove her to the point of suicide, then when Jen begged for her life, for mercy, she showed none, saying that she'd prefer her dead than non-compliant. It was when Jen was mired in the depths of depression that I proposed to her. At that point I was all Jen had left in the world, and it sure lifted her spirits. Suddenly Jen was smiling through her tears, hopeful.
I'm young Jen, age 20, still living in Cape Town. I was attending UCT with Ian, a freshman, me in my sophomore year. By now my whole world had collapsed, though perhaps imploded is a better word. Mother had rejected me, insisting that my dad and sister do so too, which they did. Her goal was to break my spirit, to force me to give up on my own dreams for my life, to dutifully follow only her will for my life, to faraway Canada. I was to leave Ian, whom I'd loved steadfastly since 15, to join my parents who were leaving to start a new life in Canada, them then 48 and 46. Mother was convinced South Africa would soon collapse into anarchy and we all had to flee in haste. 50 years later, it's obvious she was wrong, though she never, ever admitted that much, stubbornly insisting that Cape Town was now reduced to just another of the world's chaotic shanty towns. But way back in 1977, mere months before Mother forced my dad and sister to leave Cape Town, to start their new life in faraway Canada, I'd not yet confided any of this to Ian. I was scared that if he knew the truth, that maybe he'd use it as an excuse to break up with me, to also reject me. In my fragile state, I would not have overcome that. I didn't think he would. But since he was the only one I had left in the whole world, Mother having ensured that I'd lost my family, I really didn't want to risk losing him too. We were not yet engaged, and so, in my depressed state, I'd reasoned that I no longer belonged to anyone, that I was valued by no one, that I was all on my own in a cruel world, that no one wanted me, with the possible exception of Ian. But I couldn't be sure yet. Sensing something was amiss, Ian took me for a drive along the beautiful Chapman's Peak Road, me crying all the way, then parked overlooking Hout Bay, and insisted I tell him why I was so sad. Realizing I couldn't keep the unfolding family drama from him any longer, I broke down and told him everything, crying a lot as I did so. I tearfully told him that as a result of my love for him, which had made me resist Mother's cruel pressure, so that I could stay in Cape Town with him. But she was demanding my immediate and full compliance with her plan for my life. That I replace my no mom with yes mother, whatever you say mother, or else. Ian immediately understood the reason for my sadness. Without hesitation, he took my hands in his, then asked me if I'd let him propose to me without a ring. He said that we'd get the ring later, that I could choose it, but that for now it was important for him to at least give me the option to feel that I really could and should belong, that I belonged with him, for the rest of our lives. I'd really not foreseen his reaction. I'd thought that he'd either placate me, console me, or break up with me. But in hindsight his proposal was exactly what I'd needed. It was a loving, caring reprieve from overpowering sadness. His love for me was a bright ray of light that shone through the swirling dark clouds of sadness that had engulfed me for months, illuminating my soul, making it glow bright with hope again, warming my heart, making it beat strong, filling me with hope for the future. It was such a welcome feeling. His words were perfect. Suddenly I felt that I did belong after all. I belonged with him. Ian made it clear that he loved me, that he wanted and needed me, desperately, that he'd not be able to live without me. That I belonged to him, and he belonged to me, forever. I'd wanted so desperately to belong again, to feel wanted, needed, loved, so of course I said yes. It was the most natural thing to do, and I've never, ever, regretted it.
But a year later, Mother's relentless cruelty prevailed. Jen left me in Cape Town to return to be Mother's subservient obedient captive, in faraway Canada, at 21, and our 7-year-long love story's future looked bleak. But in Canada, Jenny emerged on the scene, aged 22. She was much more determined to live her own dreams, determined to outsmart their mother. I proposed to Jenny at Niagara Falls with Jen's approval, and promised her and Jen that if she ever returned to me in Cape Town, of her own free will, that we'd be married within 14 days. It was Jenny that ran away from her enraged mother in Canada, back to me in Cape Town. And true to my word, 13 days later, we were finally married. But Jenny still kept in contact with their mother, hoping for acceptance and change. Since her mother was a chronic narcissist, that was never going to happen, but Jenny didn't know that yet. Neither did I, back then. In her 40s, Jenny started to make way for Jennifer. She was a lot more realistic about dealings with Mother, finally realizing what she was up against. Abject, unflinching evil.
Leave your husband and children. Come back to me and your sister.
But Jennifer was determined that would never, ever happen, officially, in writing, declining her demand, saying, "After all the years of using any possible inheritance as your weapon, I'm officially asking that I not even be mentioned in your will." Of course the old dragon did not respect Jennifer's wish, but I ensured Jennifer never got to see that last hateful message from beyond the grave. Jennifer ensured there was never any contact with the old dragon, ever again. She'd gone to war with the dragon, and slew her. It was Jennifer that proposed to me at 48, with one condition. We were to sell everything in Canada, dismantle our 28-year Canadian life, then drive south till the road ended, and live out the rest of our lives there. I gladly accepted her proposal. Finally there was hope for a peaceful, uncomplicated future. 23 days later we arrived in Panama.
I chose to run far, far away, with Ian to Panama.
Jenny and Jennifer all share one endearing trait. They've all been able to walk away from material things, like dream homes, fancy cars, foregoing big expensive weddings, even renouncing any inheritance, if it meant that our love would benefit from doing so. Yes, I've seen them cry when giving up those things. I mean, if they didn't, I'd wonder if they were ever grateful for all those things to begin with. Grateful? Yes. Sad to lose them? Yes. Determined to make any sacrifice for our love to survive and thrive? Yes. Their lack of selfishness, and their will to put our love first has always been their top priority. I cannot fault that. So I've always redoubled my efforts to reward what essentially are very loving gestures and unselfish behaviors by them. To be fair, I pray a lot, since sometimes I just do not know how I could ever recover, for them, what I know they were so grateful for. Chalet Rose being just one of many examples. But my prayers inevitably are answered, since we always end up with even more than before, though the interim times, between blessings, can be rather stressful. In the end, it was Jennifer that won the 54-year-long battle of wills, for freedom, on behalf of Jenny, herself and me.
You lost Mother. Despite your cruelty, I've lived my own life and dreams, not yours. Mother died at 93, totally unrepentant, in late 2024. My dad predeceased her during COVID, my sister at 61 from breast cancer soon after. I was long gone from her life, having run away with Ian yet again, to Panama, from her in Canada in 2006, at age 49. Since she'd mentioned me in her will, though only to leave me one last hateful message from beyond the grave, nothing else, her will could not be probated until I'd been contacted, given a copy of the will and confirmed that I'd read it. So her lawyers found me through LinkedIn, wanting me to do all of the above so probate could proceed. But Ian and I knew her well, so I deferred to Ian, who promised that he'd not reveal her last message to me, if there was one, which there was. So I at least knew she'd died, 2 months after the fact. Did Ian, me or our sons feel sad? Truthfully, no. We felt immense relief as for the first time in our 54-year love story, the person totally committed to the demise of our love, our family and us, was finally gone from this world, never to return. Nobody mourned her death or could bring themselves to say, "May she rest in peace." Everyone who knew her was relieved, even pastors and their wives remarking that for her cruel actions and many evil curses, they were sure she went straight to Hades, and she richly deserved to. Ever since I was a UCT freshman at 19, she never changed her cruel stance towards me and Ian, repeatedly rejecting our right to love each other, to be a loving couple and later, a happy family. She'd physically separated us 7 times in 7 years. The 6th and 7th forced farewell resulted in us being very far apart, me in Canada, Ian in Southern Africa. This photo is of me at 21, at Niagara Falls in December of 1978, after Ian's failed rescue of me, our 7th forced farewell. Then after I'd become a runaway bride, but kept contact with her hoping for her acceptance, she never missed any opportunity to sow discord among us, to split us up, to get me back, broken, fully under her control again, without my husband or children. She did her level best to blame my stoic love of Ian for her cruel treatment of me, saying that I deserved her rejection and cruelty since I'd been such a disloyal, rebellious daughter. The only inheritance my sister and I got was breast cancer. To make both of her pregnancies easier in the 1950s, she'd taken diethylstilbestrol, banned in 1971 after daughters of moms who'd used it started getting breast cancer in their 50s and 60s. I'm a bilateral breast cancer survivor, right breast at 61, left breast at 65. In Canada, my sister succumbed to her first breast cancer at 61. Neither of us were given a wedding, a dress or any financial help for our weddings, not even $1. Dad was prevented from being there to walk us down the aisle, and neither of us would have any of our extended family present. She saw to that. When Linda and I were pregnant in 1986, me with our youngest son, her with a little boy too, us sisters excited, mother gave her an ultimatum. I'll have no bastards in my family. Abort your baby, or we'll never have any contact with you ever again. Linda fought back, but mother was relentless, also getting dad to deliver the same ultimatum. Having witnessed mother's cruelty towards me, she finally acquiesced to her evil demands, choosing them over her baby. Mother forced Linda to attend the christening of my baby, to teach her a lesson. Mother practiced what she called tough love, which wasn't love at all, it was cruel abuse, plain and simple. Her depression started, and it never left her. Later she secretly fell pregnant again, out of wedlock, married the father, but made the mistake of keeping contact with mother, so her marriage was doomed and she lost custody of her child because my parents stood up in family court declaring to the judge that they did not want their grandson, while the dad's family told the judge they did. Linda, her spirit totally broken, returned to live with mother, 3 time zones from her little boy, till her death at 61. She never recovered. Sadly, mother then insisted that if Linda did not want to be thrown out onto the cold, cruel streets of Canada, she must have nothing more to do with me. Having remembered how that was done to me at 21, on Christmas Eve in 1998, Linda, out of fear, obeyed mother's demands. As she lay dying in the hospice, mother refused to visit her, and she did not attend her funeral. A friend of Linda's found me on the internet, telling me Linda had only days left to live, offering to be my messenger. So I was at least able to virtually get a loving message through to her before she died. Mother hid dad's death from me, insisting Linda not tell me, but a cousin did 9 months later, on what would have been his 92nd birthday. Needless to say, that was painful, but in keeping with mother's rejection of me. It felt like I'd been her botched late-term partial birth abortion. Her rejection of me and her words were as cruel as you could ever imagine. I'd rather not repeat them. They're torturous. All of what she did was to regain total control of my life, which she'd successfully done with Linda. In hindsight, when I ran away at 22 back to Africa to marry Ian, I should have cut off all contact with her, and stayed far away from her, forever. But I didn't. She's often told me that she'd forget she ever had me, but she never did. Instead, she became obsessed with destroying my life and our love. As you've seen, my alter egos Jen and Jenny merged into Jennifer. In our late 40s we all finally broke free of her tyranny, forever, leaving her furious, vengeful, frustrated, and finally, defeated. Christmas of 2024 was our first without her in 54 years since she'd inadvertently introduced us when, on the way back from the beach, she told my dad to stop their white Mercedes to give Ian a ride. Our eyes met, our souls bonded, and that afternoon we both desperately searched for each other, but failed. Then suddenly, I looked up from the book I was browsing in the store, and there Ian was, standing right in front of me. Within minutes, our lifelong love story had begun. Despite her wishing me dead, I'm the last one left standing, and I'm still with the man I fell in love with at 15, in Africa, way back during the Christmas of 1971. I've survived. Ian survived. Soon turning 70, our love story survived and lives on. We've outlasted her. Finally, long overdue justice prevailed. Jealousy and hatred lost, true love won. I believe there's a lesson in this for evil, cruel people, but they never seem to want to change or even admit that they've done anything wrong. When mother died at 93, she was firmly convinced she'd never, ever done anything wrong. I was to be there at her deathbed, to inherit her perfect spirit so that it could live on within me, her firstborn. I'm not making this up. That's what mother had demanded for decades. I was in Canada days before her death, visiting our sons and grandchildren. I got a message to her via an intermediary, an opportunistic woman my age, that I would not be there for the transfer of her spirit to me, not then, not ever. 2 months later, I'd heard mother died soon after I'd left back for Panama. I got no inheritance. More importantly, I'd rejected her spirit, and her. Ding dong. Need I say more? The message bearer, the same opportunistic woman who'd been hoping to inherit, visited her again as she was dying and she got it instead. We hear tell that it's now destroying her family too, just as it once did to my old birth family. True story. Coincidence? I don't think so.
As you'd expect, our sons and I often surprise Jen, Jenny and Jennifer with yearly vacations to exotic places, sometimes twice each year. Paris for her birthday in her mid-40s. I've traced Jennifer and my 10th-generation ancestors to the town of Poitiers in southwest France, where both were born and lived in the late 1600s. Because they were part of a very small Christian community, back then considered a sect, their families being Protestants in an overwhelmingly Catholic France, they undoubtedly knew each other well. Circumstantial evidence strongly suggests that they even loved each other. Charles giving Genevieve this ring before they were separated forever. When their families fled to England and Africa. As you've seen, we were married with their ring, each time, 3 times, but not intentionally so. It's just the way things worked out. We celebrated Jennifer's birthday with a dinner cruise on the Seine, which most tourists to Paris do. Considering that our families had to flee France to save their lives in the early 1700s, becoming Europe's first refugees, that French word stemming back to that particular mass exodus, her family fled to England, mine to Africa, our first return to France, in over 300 years, was significant, cathartic, victorious. So this was much more than a simple birthday celebration. For us it was a victory dance. We'd survived 10 generations, reconnected in faraway Africa, and after similar challenges, we were married. As cities go, it's a very romantic city. So we even imagined we got married there, Jen once again in her lovely yellow wedding dress. I'd given Jennifer the most beautiful roses I've ever seen, to match her dress, of course. Also London, the city along the Thames that featured well in Jen's and my young lives, though most notably with Charles, then only later, with me. Hawaii. Many times. Me surprising her by buying a property in Princeville, shown here. The continental USA. Often. Florida, California, Washington State, New York, Montana, beautiful Glacier National Park shown here. Also Cartagena, Colombia. And recently, Old San Juan, Puerto Rico. And of course, magnificent Cape Town, Africa, a city so important in our love story. This being the site of my urgent proposal, without a ring, to a tearful young Jen, destined to become the first of my 3 beautiful brides. Though that wedding to Jen happened in cold and snowy Canada, during the Christmas of 1978. The second, to Jenny. Back again in Cape Town. The third to Jennifer, in Helena, Montana, 1 month before our great escape to Panama. And since we lived in Canada for 28 years, we had so many vacations in there, too many to even remember, though the Canadian Rockies were our favorite, this being Lake Louise. And this being Banff, where we've been dozens of times. Beautiful? Yes. Memorable? Yes. Almost 70 now, we're content to mostly stay in Panama, sharing time between the Pacific beaches and the cooler mountains. Occasionally we go to visit family and friends in Canada and the USA, but Europe and Africa are now rather fondly, but firmly, in our past.
Fast forward 5 decades. Ian and I have lived on the banks of this river for 20 years already, owning a home inside of a national park, unlikely as that sounds. It's in a pristine jungle very similar to our secret place inside of the Wilderness National Park in Africa, where we met and the foundation of our love story was put in place, only this special place is in the mountains of Panama. Complete with waterfalls and pools, all within easy walking distance, we feel like we've been given a huge loving gift, a place where our love story could continue and is destined to end, in the same way it began 5 decades ago in faraway Africa. We got to raise our sons here, and watched as they matured, then met beautiful local Spanish girls, and their own love story started. Life's not been without sadness and stress here, I suppose that's unavoidable, but it's also been a very happy, loving, safe place. We call our home, Riverside, God's gift. As that's exactly what it is. 34 years after we started our young love story in the Wilderness National Park, in Africa, life's come full circle. We've been living our dream come true, for the last 20 years, and counting. The front license plate of our Mercedes limo identifies it as Snow White's official carriage. That's the Panama flag. Dreams, wishes, prayers and fantasies really can come true. It can happen to you too, if you dare to ask God, and then believe. It's all very real, and we thank God, our loving Father, for everything, the good and the bad, the happy and the sad, every single day. Despite all of its challenges, it's truly been a wonderful life. I hope you've enjoyed the Three Brides trilogy. My name's Jen, a 15-year-old girl who dared to love Ian, who was then forced to pay a very high price for that love, by mother. And I'm Jenny, who at 22 became a runaway bride, intent on marrying Ian, which I did. And I'm Jennifer, who at 49 married Ian in Montana, then ran away with him to Panama.
I'm Ian, and I've loved Jen, Jenny and Jennifer, 3 splendid women who share one soul. Ever since meeting Jen at 16, life's been anything but boring. 54 years later it's still not.
Since we share the same soul, and we all love Ian, and him us, jealousy is not an issue. Only love is.
Loving Jen, Jenny and Jennifer has been a wonderful privilege. 54 years later I don't want it to ever end. So imagine our panic when her sister died of breast cancer at 61, then Jen got breast cancer in her right breast also at 61, much larger, more advanced than her sister's. Then 5 years later again in her left breast. That was beyond frightening. But in Panama Jen's cancers were removed within days of discovery, no waiting, so expertly with wide margins and no borders breached, that at 68 she has a clean bill of health, and at $17,000 for both breast cancers, it didn't ruin us financially either.